Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are myself, Chris Whitman, and Steve Becker, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Before we get started, a little information for our guests and listeners. These are your trigger warnings. We're going to be talking about horror movies, which could involve anything from murder, rape, suicide, child abuse. There will be F-bombs. So if you're not prepared for that, please take care of yourself and then come back when you're ready. Today's guest is Joel Wynkoop, best known for
Lost Faith, Creep, Killing Spree, and the Truth or Dare series.
Thank you. We just talked about these. This is an earlier show than usual, listeners, so I'm on my second cup of coffee right now. I'm getting there. Yes. He is an actor, filmmaker, and king of the B-movies. Welcome, Joel. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Anything you want to plug before we get into it?
Well, I'm working on the Craigline incident right now. That's in my editing system, and I was looking at about an hour worth of footage last night, and I was just about 3 in the morning, and just really laughing back here. I really enjoyed it, and I said I really can't wait to see this on the big screen, and all these people that did their. So this is a true social distancing movie because everything was done with everybody sending me their scenes. So.
Nice.
Anxious. It's a sci-fi comedy, so everything's put together. It just has to be put in order, and then I started. Hopefully, I'll get it out next year at the beginning of the year, and then a dozen other things I'm working on.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw your IMDb. There was like 10 things that are in production or post or something like that.
Yeah, not only do you have a very long resume there, which again is very impressive, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in production. You're very busy right now.
Yeah, my buddy and partner Phil Herman in New York, he just sent me something. He goes, "When are you going to get me that picture for Always Midnight Part 2?" And I told him, I'm working on it with all the others. And then we're doing something for another guy. I said, with his stuff and the Craigline incident and these other 3 things I got going, I'm trying to get them done one at a time.
Life has a way of getting in the way.
No.
So in this interview, we'll be asking 3 sets of questions covering your childhood, teenage years, and adulthood to find out what it is about horror that you like. The idea is that if we interview enough people, we might find some interesting common themes. Also might find some unexpected ones, and that'd be interesting as well. We come at the same questions from these different angles because sometimes it triggers memories that you'd forgotten about. But that said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there are any questions that you don't want to answer, just say, "I'll pass," and we'll move on.
Okay.
It's like that game show, Pass, or whatever.
Yes.
One of those game shows. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, let's get into it. So we'll start with childhood. What are some of your earliest memories of scary things? Either scary, like as a bad experience, or also like influential. Anything like, movies you may have seen as a child, books you read, scary coats on the wall that looked like a creature that was going to eat you in your sleep.
Relatives
are also scary.
I think first thing I remember seeing is like Wizard of Oz. I was very scared of the flying monkeys. I remember when that scene came on, I didn't want to be alone in my room.
Okay.
I was like 7 or 8. And then later, some guys, this was a cool story. And I'm writing a book too. In fact, I just picked up a publisher that's working with me to get it out, which is because I've been working on this forever. And finally I found somebody that says, "No, we'll work with you." But I was with a friend of mine in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, and these truck drivers were at the house. And one of the truck drivers goes, "Hey, kid, come here." So, you're being a dumb kid. You walk over, "Yeah." And he's like, "Here, this will keep you up at night." And he throws me a magazine. It was Famous Monsters, number, 8 or something. I think it had Bela Lugosi on the cover, and I was like, wow. And my friend Jimmy Marty, he came over to me and he goes, "Oh, look at this. This is cool." And those guys left. I think that maybe kind of started it because I was like, wow, look at all these monsters. And then I discovered a show called Horror Incorporated. And it would start out with a coffin. It would come on at midnight. And I would always beg my dad, "Can I please stay up and watch this?" And the first thing I saw in there was Dracula. And when Horror Incorporated opens, it was a pretty scary scene for, a kid. You'd see on the television, there'd be a coffin, and then there'd be a mist blowing over in fact, I looked it up on YouTube. I was like, man, this is really cool seeing this again. And the mist and the fog is blowing over the coffin, and then a hand pokes out of the coffin and starts to open it up. And then these graphics come up that say Horror Incorporated. And then they go into their first title, which the first one I saw in there was Dracula. And I remember even that being scared because I tried to play it off by going out to my dad and going, Dad, this is really funny. It's got a guy named Renfield. And he goes, would you like to eat a rat? I go, it's so funny. No, I was scared to death and didn't want to stay in there alone. So I was trying to make something up for it. So I think that goes way back. That's like 1968 or 7. And that is probably my whole start into the horror and why I like scary movies. And of course, it just, went on as the ages go on, you see more things. But I think that was the start. That magazine, those I wish I could track down those truck drivers and go, hey, man, thanks for giving me that magazine because this really started everything for me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I can relate. Like Dr. Paul Bear for me was an early similar experience like that. The classic 70s, 80s horror TV shows like that. Yeah. And now looking back on it, you look at stuff like that, like, oh, it's a cool fog effect. I can see how they did that, and the skeleton hand crawling out of the coffin. You think about the production aspect of it. It's funny.
Yeah.
But at the time, of course, particularly in childhood, you're not thinking about anything like that. It's just the emotional response. What scared you about the monkeys?
Same thing. It was, when a Wizard of Oz come out, that was, I think I was watching it like in 67, I want to say. And, so I'm 7 years old. I don't know, just when they got to that dark I was up in my bedroom. It was on the second story. I was there by myself, mom and dad and everybody's downstairs, but I'm upstairs on my bed in front of my little television set, little black and white TV, and watching it, and, the Wizard of Oz, we're going to go see the wonderful Wizard of Oz. And you're like, oh yeah, Dad. And then the monkeys, and I'm like, oh God, what are those? They're flying out the windows and they're in the sky. That's scary.
Mm-hmm. Plus they were really realistic, It was like, for the time. For the time,
yeah. But yeah, all in fun, but yeah, still, again, you're 7 or 8 years old and you're watching this stuff by yourself. You're like, this is scary.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've mentioned it on a few of our interviews. My early thing like that was Thriller. Looking back on it now, it's a fun video and the special effects were awesome. But at the time, I was about the same age, maybe 7 or 8, and it scared the ever-living shit out of me.
Yeah,
watch zombies busting through the floor.
Right, watch Thriller at 7. You're not like singing the song. You're like crawling under the bed, hiding.
Right.
What was it about Dracula that scared you?
I think just because it was... Which, of course, with the horror movies then, like Vincent Price said, that the horror movies are about cutting the head off and rolling down. In those days, Dracula and Wax Museum, they were scary for other reasons. It wasn't like Dracula showed up and ripped the girl's chest open and bit her on the breast. And so they didn't do that. It was scary because it was dark and the story was cool. And they took you into this place that you can't really totally figure out. And again, being a kid, you're like, you can sit down and watch Dracula now, but you watch it maybe for different reasons. Like you watch it, well, oh, this is a horror movie from way back. Oh, it's classic. It's Bela Lugosi. We got to watch this. But then again, it's dark. There's a castle. You got a vampire coming down the stairs, and it's just dark and scary and creepy. And then, of course, then you have the storyline for a kid to follow. Then it cuts to, oh, hey, hi, Jane. Oh, hi, John. How are you today? I'm doing pretty. Then that's when you tune out as a kid. But, the whole story's there. It's dark. It's about a vampire. And you know what you're getting into when you get into it because you've heard of Dracula. He's a vampire. Now you're watching it on TV. So to me, yeah, just all that and the castle, that just made for a good story and, something that was, scary. And the type of thing that you're probably not supposed to be watching. I was surprised my dad let me watch it. I think there was times he was like, no, go to bed. Okay.
Yeah, aside from the dark and the brooding sense of it, it's also, like you say, more suspenseful than today's horror.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't have jump scares back then. They just had stingers in the soundtrack and creepy lighting and just long, suspenseful pauses.
Yeah.
It was better.
So it sounds like even early on there was this mixture of fear, but also enjoyment, because you mentioned that magazine that you enjoyed. What was it that you enjoyed about the magazine and the monsters in there?
It's just turn. I remember turning the pages and going, wow, look at that. That's cool. And of course, again, you're back in like 67, 68. So there was no like, oh, look at this person's ripped to pieces and their guts are hanging out. It wasn't nothing like that. It was just like Creature from the Black Lagoon and Dracula. And oh, wow, look, there's Frankenstein. And all the space movies, the invasion movies and stuff. So it's just stuff that I hadn't seen before. And I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, this is something you can do. Wow, this is a great new world. Let's forget about the treehouse and start watching movies. We watched probably in the early 70s, or it might even be in the 60s. I'd have to check up when it came out. But I spent the night at my buddy's house, Jim Marty, and we watched The Green Slime, which was a Japanese movie with Robert Horton, which was neat because later on in life, my friend in high school was named Robert Horton. It wasn't him, obviously, but yeah, that was cool. And then Jimmy got me to watch. He was like, Joel, you got to watch this. It's on TV tonight. It's called The Birds, and they peck this guy's eyes out. And I'm like, oh, cool. So a little bit of culture. I got to see this horror movie, but it was Alfred Hitchcock. So you're like, wow. So my first time at watching something like that too, because you're sitting there watching, and it was Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. It was on television. There was commercials, so we're all gathered around the TV, and we had popcorn. And another one I remember was a cool one, and the Martys and I, we used to do this all the time. We'd watch a movie, and then we'd pick characters on TV, and we go, okay, you're that character. I'll be this character, and Joni, you're that character. So when something would happen to the character, I think mine was they tied him down to the ground. It was in Africa, and they poured honey all over him, and then all the army ants came and ate him. Just were chewing his face off and everything, and they're going, Joel, you're dying now. And you'd be like, shut up, man, we're not really dying, we're playing. But I don't remember what that movie was, but I remember that scene. They poured honey or some kind of stuff all over him, and then the army ants just came and they just swarmed all over his body, and they were chewing his face off. So there was something of that kind of gore element then, because I remember that, Green Slime, it was more space and it was a monster, but it wasn't nothing like with the gore. But then Alfred Hitchcock, of course, had the birds pecked his eyes out. They cut in for that close up. But that one story when they were like out in the jungles and they were trekking through the jungles, and then the guy being tied down and then being eaten by ants. So those are pretty cool, way back when stories of horror and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So
it sounds like you had a decent, at least one friend that was also into this. Did you have other friends who were also into horror, or just the one?
Again, way back then, no, you don't, of course, because you didn't have internet. I was just telling somebody the other day, I miss the 70s. It was kind of neat when you're with your mom and dad in your car and you're like, I can't wait till I get home so I can call my friend and tell him about the new monster movie. And now it's everybody's picked their cell phone up and they're like, hey man, did you see it? So my real friend was Jim Marty, next door to me when I lived in, when I moved to Lake Elmo, Minnesota. Now, when I lived in Spring Valley, Minnesota, right before that, probably too young. That's when I got introduced to it. And there was only me and Jim. He was my best friend. If we did anything, it was usually just him and I'd stay over there and we'd watch movies. And we both liked the horror stuff. I think I probably liked it more than he did. Oh, another one we watched together, and it scared the hell out of us. And to this day, I'd say like 8 years ago, I bought a bootleg from a guy at a convention. It was called The Shuttered Room. That, for 1967, for a 8-year-olds to 9, whatever I was, 10, when that came on, we watched that on television. That thing was scary, man. I remember going to bed at night, and we were talking, and we were like, let's go through the whole movie and talk from the beginning to the end. And he goes, okay, the first thing that would happen. And then we get to the part where the person was in the shuttered room, tied up, and damn, it was a scary movie. I watched it again, and I go, I can see where as a kid, I was like scared to death, because I look at it now, and I'm like, that's still a pretty scary movie, The Shuttered Room. And so, yeah, most of all my stuff was just Jimmy and I watching, basically because it was on television. I mean, then you moved into Gilligan's Island and Batman and the Green Hornet. and the Brady Bunch and all that stuff. But and our nights were all the horror stuff. And for me, that was pretty much it. Me and Jimmy, there were other friends. Those are the friends that would either beat me up or you'd go exploring in the woods and they jump out and attack you and threaten to kill you. And two guys one time, they grabbed us and they took us down to their fort and they held us up against the wall. There's like 9 of them, and they were taking the rubber from a tire from a bicycle and they're whipping it at us and slapping it again. We were looking at each other like, oh shit, these guys are going to kill us. And then later on, they let us go. No, we weren't going to really hurt you. You scared the hell out of us, man.
Cheeky shenanigans.
Yeah.
What about what was it about the shuttered room that was scary to you?
Oh man, it was this. I don't know what she was. She was like, and her face was all like, because at 1 minute she like turns to the camera and her eye is all like kind of distorted or ripped open and scarred. And she kind of looks at the camera and she's like, ah. And I guess she wasn't a monster. They made it so scary. It was like, because, and then we had up on the top of the hill on one of our roads, if you went way up on the top of the hill, there was like a mill, like a mill where they did the wheat and all that. And that mill looked like the shuttered room. So my buddy and I said, up on that hill, that the girl's in that building, because that's the shuttered room. But it was just, again, it was dark, and again, I'm saying if I watch it now, I wouldn't be sitting there, oh my God, this is so scary. But it still had that content of something was locked up in this room and the guy couldn't tell anybody, and somebody came to visit and they looked through the keyhole and they could see the person in there and they were chained up and they want to try and get to him. But, and then it just all unfolds then. I'm going to probably watch it again tonight now.
Kind of reminds me of, is it Bluebeard? Is it the Bluebeard story where it's, it gets married and you can go anywhere in the house, but not in that room. That's the one thing that you're not supposed to have. And of course she wants to go in that room.
It could be.
Bluebeard was a pirate.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
that's what I'm trying to remember, if it was Bluebeard or a different one.
If there's a character name, but it definitely is called the Shuttered Room. Like if you just IMDb it or whatever, you'll see it, or even YouTube Shutter. It's neat when you can go on YouTube, like I said about Horror Incorporated, punch in a name and you can instantly you got your memory back and you can be, oh, there it is, the Shuttered Room, there it is.
So you had a friend who was in with you on some of this stuff. Did any of these experiences trigger any fears that you had never had before?
No, just that, when it would get dark outside, you'd look outside and you think, oh, there's vampires and monsters out there that might come get you. Or we live next to the graveyard. Sometimes they're worried about the graveyard. Are people going to come out of that graveyard at night? But I think that was it. I don't think there was too many times where I was actually like, so afraid. I remember being upstairs for the Wizard of Oz watching that, but I don't think there was ever I think I had some nightmares as a kid. I still have nightmares now. Sometimes I wake up just yelling, and I fight in my sleep. I throw karate kicks in my sleep, and I punch the headboard. I cracked the headboard one night. I punched it so hard because I was fighting. I was fighting somebody in my sleep, and my wife was like, "I'm glad you hit the headboard," and now
right.
Me too.
It's a fun way to wake up. Oh, why's my hand hitting? Oh shit.
Yeah, but yeah, as a kid, I don't think I was ever trying to remember if I was like really super scared, but I don't think so. Just like watching those movies, maybe thinking about it. Or one time, I was up in bed sleeping. And I heard my mom and dad come in the house, and I thought, okay, good, mom and dad are home. And then I heard them leave the house, and then I got out of my bed and came down. And then when I come downstairs, there was one thing. We had an attic, and at the top of the stairs, there was like a little opening, and you would unhook the thing and open it up, and you could go in there, and that was our attic. And I swore something was inside that attic waiting to get me. I remember that. And our basement. I do remember that. You guys are bringing this out now. The basement. Down in the kitchen, there's a door, and if you open that door, the stairways go down into complete, total darkness.
Mm-hmm.
That was scary because I knew there was a monster down there, and I found out there wasn't because there was a tornado one day, and it was coming right through the middle of the town, and my dad and mom and myself and our dog touche. All had to go down into the basement with my mom had all the preserves of the jam and all that. And sit down
Which
there.
Which can be scary in a different way.
Yeah, it was a dark. So yeah, it was either the monsters were there, but we're coming down here to seek refuge from the tornado. But yeah, I do remember that the attic and that basement were scary. So my parents had come home. They left. I get out of bed. I come to my sister wasn't living there then. I come down the stairs. I go out and they're not there. I'm going, Mom, Dad, and they're not there. So instantly I'm scared because my mom and dad came home and now they're gone again. I don't know where they went. I was asleep. I guess they left. He's asleep. Let's escape. So I called my brother, who's a cop, and I said, Bruce, Mom and Dad are gone. I'm really scared what to do. I'll be right there. He hangs up the phone. He's in St. Paul, so he's maybe 25 minutes out. So then all of a sudden, Mom and Dad come home, and I hug my mom. And where were you? Well, somebody broke down, and we went and helped them. And you're okay. Well, Bruce is. And then Bruce shows up, and he's, Dad, is Joel okay? He said he was alone. Oh, he's not alone. He's fine. Go to bed. He's all right. Go home.
You mentioned nightmares. Did you have any reoccurring ones?
Just the reoccurring ones I have were so dang real. Even to this date that you could, they're a dream, but you could swear that they just seem so. I recently, within the last 8 years, but I remember being at my mom's house, driving down to Fort Pierce, and my wife and I spending the night there one night. And as I was sleeping on the floor, I was in this weird mist dream, and it was my mom coming down the hallway. But the lights weren't lit like they would be, or the room wasn't lit like it would be. It was darker. And she just went, Joel, like that. And I immediately woke up like, what? And I was the exact same position. The hallway was right in front of me, just like the hallway was in front of me in the dream. But in the hallway, in the dream, it was like more darker and shadowier. And I just remember waking up to that thinking, okay, that was a dream, but that was pretty damn real. And just other ones where I think one was my nephew was coming over and he was just weird coming up the stairs, and I woke up screaming. That was when I was like 15. And but yeah, now they're just replaced with people putting guns in your face and shooting you. One time I told the guys at work when I was working for Crystal Springs Water, this is like 20 years ago. And I told the one guy, I go, guys, God, I had a dream last night. I was delivering water, and those Rottweilers get out, and they were ripping my face apart and ripping my arms off. And the one dude goes, that's what you get for making all those horror movies. I don't know at all. But that was a guy on my route. You talk about scary. Every time I'd go to his house, those dang Rottweilers were huge, and they would jump up in the window and they'd scratch on the glass, and they were barking, and stuff was flying out of their mouths, and they were knocking the blinds down. I go, how do people live with two gigantic dogs that want to they must be destroying the house, pooping and peeing all over and ripping crap up. So they're like attacking the window. One time I went there and the kids opened the door. I go, oh my God, close your door.
It's their dogs. You're like, go, hide, get into safety.
Because I'm bringing up their bottles of water, and the kid opens the door. Hi, close your door. Dogs are coming. So I'm telling the guy at the tire place about making his delivery at his home. I go, man, I go to your house. Your dog's like they're acting like they want to kill. Oh, they can't get out. Don't worry about it. They're fine. And I'm thinking, yeah, but your wife must hate it because I know they're tearing those blinds up. One day I go, it's Florida Tire and Recycling. I go there about, a couple months later. And he goes, you're right. And I go, about what? Our dogs. I go, what happened? Dogs came through the window, chewed up our neighbor. I go, oh my God. He goes, they ripped him to pieces, man. He didn't have I go, oh, jeez. They got into his arm and his face and his private parts and his leg. And the two of them were just tearing the guy to pieces. The ambulance came, the dog catcher, police. I think they shot him. I go, oh my God. He goes, yeah, pretty lucky it wasn't you, huh? I go, yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those retrospective fears. Like, you don't think of it at the time. Well, of course, you do think of it at the time because it's a fucking demon salivating dog. But even more so looking back on it, like, yeah, you're right. I could have died. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Here's your water bill. It's an extra $1,000.
Right. Okay, but no reoccurring themes in the childhood dreams.
No, I don't think so. It was always just like that was the one that was just horrible, and then mutated things out of life, and then pretty much just comes like violent ones. There's 3 or 4 guys, and I'm going, hey, take it easy, guys, and they pull a gun on me and they shoot me, or I fight them and I beat the crap out of them. Yeah, no more realistic type things that are happening in the world as far as violence and stuff like that. But
right. Did you have a favorite Halloween costume when you were a kid?
My mom bought me a Superman costume, and at the bottom of the shirt part of it, it would have a picture of the person that's got the costume on, a little boy, and Superman, and it said, "Remember, this suit cannot make you fly. ... Only Superman can fly."
Got to put that liability contingency in there.
Well, it was right. Yeah, it was right after some kid had a towel around his shoulder and he was waiting for a truck to come, and he jumped out in front of the truck and put his hand out and he goes, "I'm Superman," and the truck ran him over, killed him dead.
Of course it did. Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that's why that went on the Superman costume. But yeah, that was my favorite. I remember one year, and I hated it. My sister was dressing me up as a girl. Like, well, I don't want to go as a girl. But what am I going to do? She's like 15. I'm 8. She would slap me around and stuff. So it was like, whatever, But when I got to the Superman, I was like, oh, this is good. I remember taking it out in the backyard to show my same friend with the horror movies. And I put the whole costume on. And then I guess I ran out like, look, I'm Superman. Well, my mom saw me out the window. So later she's like, have you shown that costume to anybody else? And I go, no, Mom, not at all. Then why did I see you in the backyard showing Jimmy Marty? Oh, yeah, that was a different Joel Wynkoop from episode 69.
What?
Yeah, and then, but that was it. I like Superman. I think I dressed up one time as the Green Hornet. It was a lot of superhero stuff then. I wasn't really going out as a monster or horror stuff. It was Superman.
Superheroes popular.
Yeah, and Green Hornet. And then I would make my own costume.
So it sounds like in childhood, at least, there was this mixture of, like you said, there were certain things that really did scare you and some things that made you happy. If you could sum up what it was in childhood that made you happy, it sounds like from what you were mentioning earlier that sort of like cool new styles. There were things that nobody else was doing before, and so when you saw it, you're like, wow, that's interesting, in that magazine anyway. Was there any other common theme that you can think of in your childhood that attracted you to horror?
That magazine and Horror Incorporated, those are the two biggest things I think that because that was just seeing that and seeing this whole other world. And my parents took me to Space Odyssey 2001. Mm-hmm. And although it wasn't horror, it was still
a fucked up movie for a kid to see. How old were you when you saw that?
I'd want to say like before 10, like 8 or 9.
Wow.
But yeah, other than that, just the interest peak. And then, of course, like I said, yeah, you were saying like, hey, what made you happy? I was a kid, and flying my kite made me happy. But
yeah, not every question on here is going to apply to you, and that's fine. That we just have them because you never know what's going to trigger what with whom. And when we ask, if there's something that particularly made you excited or something, maybe you can't answer that, but there are some guests who do.
Yeah.
So we have to ask, and
Oh no, absolutely no. I mean that. I mean it wasn't just no. I wasn't being a smartass. I was just saying it's not just always something with horror to make you happy, but this me going out flying my kite, playing in the woods or fort, playing. We used to play a thing called time tunnel. My neighbor and I would be Doug and Tony. We'd throw ourselves down these hills on 3M property and roll all the way down the hill, and then we get up and Doug, are you okay? Yes, Tony. We went back and we're in the age of the dinosaur. Look, a dinosaur. And stuff like that. But so it was and then of course when you're a kid, you didn't, let's play this video game you didn't have a damn video game. You went outside and did stuff. We built a raft and sailed out into the middle of a lake. My parents didn't know this till like 20 years later, I go, "Oh, Mom, you didn't know that? We built a raft one time and we went out in the middle of the lake." Oh my God. Yeah, we could have been killed, but we weren't.
Thank God. So what about your teenage years? What were some of your scariest stories or books or movies during your teenage years?
Teenage years was getting to when I moved from Lake Elmo, Minnesota, just learning about, the monsters and famous monsters. Now we're coming to Florida. And so I'm turning on the TV and, oh, wow, what's this? The $6 Million Man. This is really cool. And then I'm paging through another because now I'm involved with, I got Famous Monsters and all these other magazines. And, well, there wasn't a lot then, of course. There's Famous Monsters was the king of them all. I'm looking through that and I'm going, oh, this is interesting. King Kong was a little 18-inch art piece, and the guy, moved it a little bit each frame to make the whole movie. And then the Fay Wray was put into the a giant hand that they did make for the window scene. And I'm reading all this, and then I'm reading about Godzilla in the same magazine, and I'm like, oh, Godzilla's a man in a suit on a train board like mine. That's cool. And then I was getting into that, and then of course $6 Million Man, and that's when my dad, he goes, well, I'll buy you a Super 8 camera if you want. I go, because he wanted me to get in something. Don't get into drugs or don't get girls pregnant. Here, let's get you a camera, make your stupid movies, and at least keep you off of drugs and keep you from getting women pregnant. So he bought me this camera, and right away my neighbor Steve Campbell, I go, hey, I got this movie camera, do you want to make a movie? And he's like, yeah. And we made a little dinosaur movie with all our in fact, Tim Ritter, who I only knew him as a neighbor. He was I must have been 50, so he was about 8. He brought over his Allosaurus to use in the movie, or Tyrannosaurus Rex, one of them, and we put that in the movie, and Gulanium, and we did that. And then Steve and I said, why don't we make a movie like The $6 Million Man? We'll have a Bionic Boy in it, and then we can have you in there as the Invisible Boy, but you're also can teleport. So we'll call it the $8 Million Boy meets the Invisible Transport Boy. And then we spent so much time shooting this thing because it was an hour when it got done, and you had to splice it. There was no. You didn't edit like you do now. You splice it. You cut the film. You look at it through a reel. You reel it through. So I got into doing all that, and it wasn't until 85. Of course, I might be skipping ahead too much, so I'll save that. But yeah, for the doing the movie, learning to do little stupid effects like the safe, where he punches through the safe and pulls stuff out. I go, oh, I'll put a sparkler in there and light it. It'll look so great. And the thing caught on fire. And I'm like, okay, this isn't. And I caught my hand on fire doing a movie for, it was for my Greek mythology class in the 10th grade. The guy said there's not a lot of fire on the monster anymore. And it was a little armature, just like King Kong. And I go, yeah, it's going out. Let me throw some more gas on it. I had the gas in a container, and I threw the gas, and the gas, you could actually see the gas come out, hit the monster, it exploded, and then you saw the fire go back up the trail of the gasoline, hit the container, and my hand blew up and it was on fire. And I'm running around the backyard putting my hand out because it's on fire. So I put it out, and my friend goes, Joel, are you okay? And I go, yeah, now I know how the Human Torch feels. And he goes, oh, he's okay. He's quoting superheroes. He's fine.
Nice.
But yeah, it was like movie making experience. So yeah, having your hand set on fire, that was kind of scary. But yeah, just that was the whole, I got into the horror in the late 60s, and then into the movie making process in I don't know, 70, I think it's actually 72 was when we did the Bionic Boy. So that was kind of the whole start of that, but the horror was always there. But that really came when later in life, when I met up with Tim Ritter, and then because I was kind of watching the same things, like Tim's was like The Incredible Melting Man. Mm-hmm. And then, and then of course when Halloween came, and then you're like, oh, cool. That's what got Tim started. Well, Tim actually got started because he worked with me, and he told me this recently. I saw one of his interviews, and he was saying, he goes, I think Joel Wynkoop got it into me because he used to, babysit me. And I say not babysitting, just watched him and his sister when they were younger because they weren't babies. But I put him in my movies, and then later on in life, he got a camera with the S&H green stamps, and he started making action like Dirty Harry movies and then into the horror stuff. And then we regrouped like 10 years later. I read about him in a school newspaper. My nephew told me about him, and that's how we got back together. And then, of course, shared all our ideas, and then, man, we got to do some movies. And that's kind of how that all started. Cool. I know I jumped ahead like 5 years, but sorry.
10 years. That was still in adolescence to adulthood. And that's just a really cool story. I mean, it's kind of like a mix of Super 8 and like what I've seen from this director, Jeremy Saulnier. He did the Blue Room, Green Room, Blue Ruin. And just looking at a lot of his making of stuff, it's like the dude started making, just shitty low budget films with him and his friends when he was like 10 to 15 or 15 to 18, and they do things like ketchup packets for exploding blood and firecrackers for gunshots, and just stories like that people that grew up and started filming at a very early age.
Yeah, we had a friend. It was I think it was about the same age, like we were both 15, but he took it to the extreme. They were in Palm Beach Gardens, and he goes, "Yeah, Joel, we had the guy in the bridge, and we squibbed." They were using ketchup packets, but they squibbed them with firecrackers. So they lit him on his chest. They had a shirt on it, but they would light the firecracker over the ketchup packet and they were on a bridge. They wanted to do a fall from the Palm Beach Gardens bridge, and the thing went off, and it did blow the package open, but it also caught his shirt was on fire. So when he actually fell, he fell into the water, of course, and extinguished it. But they were going beyond the point where I'm like, dude, I'm not going to put a lit firecracker on my chest in effect. Come on, man. But the scariest thing about those times, because you say about the scary, and it's not, especially when you're a kid, there's always a guy. I remember one time when I was in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, getting in a fight in a playground, and I punched the guy, and he goes, "That's it? That's all you got?" And man, he hit me so hard, knocked me on my ass, and I was like, I just got beat up. I always remembered that. That was Mark Peltier. He knocked me out. But then later in life, I was in school in Lake. By then I moved to Lake Park, Florida. And big difference between Florida and Minnesota. And there was this one kid there every day. That's all he would write it. One time I was sitting there in class and I'm going, I hope this kid forgets about beating me up. I hope this kid forgets about beating me up. I hope this kid forgets about me beating up. I look over the guy's shoulder in front of me. He's writing a big sign on his notebook. He goes, "Kenny, beat the guy up at 3:00. And I'm like, oh God, he's reminding him. So I hid. I stayed. I went out. And I went to my bike where you unlock your bike. And I stayed there with my bike till like 5 at night that night till everybody had gone home because I didn't want to get beat up. And it wasn't until I went to North Tech Community College in West Palm, same area as Lake Park. And I never really asserted myself before because I was always, if someone said something, I was like, oh, I guess they're going to beat me up, or you run away from it. And this guy, he was like the worst guy in the school. Everybody thought he was connected with mafia. If you messed with him, he'd kill you. And I was just getting into, I don't think I didn't start a karate yet. But this guy put me in a headlock and he was choking me. And I was like, okay, it's not killing me. If he wants to lead me around and make fun of me for a while, just let him do it. I don't want to fight nobody. And this other kid goes, hey, and the guy's name is Peter Cordani. The other guy goes, hey, Peter, you going to stick his head in the toilet like you did the other guy? And right then is when something popped in my head. Nobody's fucking putting my head in no fucking toilet. Fuck this guy. I'm taking him out. And I pulled my fist forward. And I went back so hard with my elbow, and I guess I caught him up in the solar plexus because this guy was like, that's cool. And I'm like, damn straight, man. I'm going to do that from now on. And when I was in Suncoast High School, I remember one guy was walking by somebody, and he pushed me, and it snapped inside my head. I turned around and pushed that guy so hard. He went off the sidewalk into the bushes and crashed, threw his books all over. People are like, what are you doing? I go, hey, man, he pushed me. I'm pushing back. I'm not going to push me around anymore.
I got to ask, the guy who asked him if he was going to stick your head in the toilet, was that the same guy with the sign, like beat him up later? Like, dude, you're not helping.
No, yeah, I know. It might have been. I don't know.
Kind of reminds me of what was a Karate Kid. Hey, Johnny.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That reminds me of that. You're right. He was like, didn't he? I think his girlfriend was like, "Come on, you got to face him." He goes, "No, I'm not scared of him. I forgot something. I got to go do something." That was me. I mean, I'd go there in the morning, lock my bike up, and then I remember opening up this, and it was a book too. It was about black holes in space, and I was reading the book, and I said, I'm staying here until the bell rings. I don't want to run into. It was Kenny Atkinson. He was always going to beat me up. And in fact, I think I contacted him on Facebook and I say, hey, man, I'll come whoop your ass now. No, man. So I'll beat your ass now. But I'm reading the book. My head's down in the book. I said, just everybody leave me. And then all of a sudden, there was like a human-shaped shadow right above me on the book. Oh. And I go, oh, God, he found me. He's going to kill me. And I look up and it's the, when you were a kid, you like wore a orange band and a belt and you were like a crossing guard or something.
School monitor.
Yeah, like a monitor. And he says, hey, you have to leave the bicycle area and go out into the playground. I'm like, oh, great, that's where he's at. But I managed to get around and miss him each time. And then the day of the fight, I don't think it ever came. I think they said, well, like I said, I stayed at my bike until everybody had gone home. But it was, as a kid, it was always like, there's one guy's out there just wants to beat you. I remember he said something to me. He goes, hey, you and me. And I was a new kid. I just moved there. I probably wasn't there a week. And he looked at me and he goes, hey, and this is all from like my bodyguard too. Cause he looked at me and he goes, hey, after school, we're going to fight. And then as soon as he turned around, I made a face at him and I was like, yeah, making a big face at him. And then his buddy, Mark, goes, Kenny, he just made a face at you. And I'm like, oh my God, does everybody tell on everybody here?
Yep. Welcome to Florida.
So it sounds like, at least during your adolescent years, then there's sort of this mishmash of fear and panic and excitement that's kind of all gelled together, if that kind of makes sense.
I mean, yeah, that can be said for any kind of adolescence, really. It's part of the whole package deal.
Growing process, yeah.
I
mean, if Freddy Krueger was around then, I probably been like, I hope Freddy Krueger shows up in his nightmares and rips his face off.
Did you have any recurring dreams during this part of your life?
Oh man, no. Then it was kind of just getting into you're in love with girls and you meet a girl. I do remember one night,
different kind of recurring dreams.
Yeah, at a skating, we would always go out and skate. You get to go to the skating rink and everything. And there was a girl there named Dana Abbott, and I was crazy about her. And my nephew Mark came along, and she was paying more attention to Mark than she's paying attention to me. And that got me mad. And I remember getting home, and my Super 8 camera sat up on my very top shelf. And I was laying in bed or sitting on the bed. And I think I was like really upset because I remember my dad coming in and he goes, what's the matter? And I go, well, we went to the skating rink and Dana, she didn't pay attention to me. She's paying attention to Mark. And that makes me mad. And my dad's like, well, sometimes a girl paying attention to them means she likes you because this other guy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm, that's what set it off. I was in there getting mad. And then I picked something up off my dad. I don't remember what it was, but I remember throwing it. And whatever it was, it smashed really loud and exploded, like hitting the wall right above my movie camera. And because I remember telling my neighbor later, I go, yeah, I got so mad. I threw this thing and it was right above the camera. I could have hit the camera and wrecked it and we wouldn't be making movies anymore. And so, yeah, then it kind of got to that where you're thinking about, do you like me? Mark X if you like me and mark the other square if you don't like me, okay? It's that kind of, bullcrap mentality too, because as you're growing up, girls don't have cooties, girls are cute.
Right? It's funny how they instantly go from being yucky to it's the thing that I have to have most in life.
Yeah.
So other than Tim Ritter, was there anybody in particular that, like, as Chris likes to put it, was your horror crew at that point?
Well, okay. At that point in like 72, it was just Steve Campbell and myself. Mike Greenberg was also a high school friend of mine. Mark Heidebrick was my nephew. He was in the movie. And that was it. It wasn't nothing elaborate. We did it. We just took the Super 8 camera and, okay, you run across there. Okay, now you use some bionics. So it's simple stuff like that. And Steve,
what about Halloween? Did you participate in Halloween? Anything particular or special during your teenage years?
Halloween then, I think I was basically, of course, out of it. And you're like, nah, you don't dress up no more. You do that as a kid. So now I'll just stay home and I'll, even in the 70s, I think at one point after I did my Halloween thing and with Superman and Green Hornet and stuff, I was like, nah, I think the neighbors were teasing me about going out. So then I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just stay home. I want to see the kids. But in reality, you really want to go out, but everybody's laughing at you.
So other than the fear of getting your ass beat, was there anything else in your teenage years that particularly scared you? And if not, that's fine.
It probably wasn't even like, well, yeah, because I remember a kid wanting to wear my jeans jacket. I had all these patches on it. And I guess I was, anybody else would just say, dude, this is my jacket. I'm not going to let you wear it. But like a dumbass, I think I said, oh, okay, you can wear it one day. And I never seen that thing again. And then I remember going to my teacher, Mrs. Smith, and I go, Mrs. Smith? And she goes, yes. Johnny's waiting outside to beat me up. Is there anything you could do about it? And he was waiting outside the door. And one kid's is Suncoast High School and John F. Kennedy High School both had second levels. And there were not stories, I've seen it happen, where the bad kid grabbed the kid and he threw him off the railing. And the kid landed. Yeah, threw him right off the bed, just like straight out of class 1984 or something. They would do that. But yeah, she looks out I look out the door and I see him standing there. He wanted my jacket. I had him. I remember telling him I had the Voyage to the Sea model. I go, oh, yeah, I got the Sea View at home, and I want that. Oh, I will buy it from you. And I remember thinking he's going to beat me up so I went home and took it all apart and brought it to him in a box and had him buy it from me. But I don't remember what happened to my jacket with all my cool patches on it. I think he stole that. And so it was always a thing there because I was like, oh God, these guys, why do these people want to beat me up? And then, but it was just growing up. Everybody goes through that where I don't think anybody's got through all their schooling without having someone say, I'm gonna beat you up. Even the guy that got beat up, he's probably beat up by his dad all the time. So that was always kind of grief. I remember one year the one guy got behind me on all fours and the other guy got in front of me and he pushed me.
Of course.
And I hit the ground and my knee came up and hit me in the eye and it created a big black eye. And my parents took me to school and they were like, well, he can't be hit in the head because he had trauma as a child. He had meningitis and encephalitis. He pretty much was dead to the world, but he came back and he can't have trauma to his head. And they're saying all this stuff. And the principal's probably like, I don't give a shit, man. It's school. Shit's going to happen. You want to sue us? Get in line with everybody else that wants to sue us. So it was just those teenage things that pretty much that scared you. Was just you're worried more about getting beat up than King Kong's going to come to your neighborhood and smash your house or Godzilla's going to show up.
Okay. So the direction it seems like we're going was, so there was some interest in horror in childhood, and then in the teenage years it moved more into excitement, and there was some interest in the movie making process. So now you're getting work-based fascination and achievement of, how do I solve the puzzle and how do I, win the prize of completing the task that I'm trying to complete. And I'm guessing, now that we're going to move into the adult phase of your life, somehow horror got brought back into that. You had mentioned meeting back up with Tim, but how can I say this? Did you get back into horror before you got back with Tim, or what order did that happen in?
Yeah, I remember still seeing stuff. I remember, and if you can I think you could still relate this to horror. I remember when Dino De Laurentiis came out with King Kong, I think 1977. I saw that, and of course I was like, that's a real King Kong, man. This one's cool. But I still liked, and then I was I went to Minnesota to visit my brother from Lake Park, Florida, and Friday the 13th came out, and I remember wanting to see that movie, and I went I borrowed my brother's car. Well, he didn't know it. His wife said I could take the car. He didn't know I took my brother. But I went into, St. Paul. They were out in the kind of the suburb part, like on the outer area. But you'd have to actually drive into St. Paul where everything was going on. I found a theater that was playing Friday the 13th. And I went by myself. And I just thought that was so cool because here's, Jason and the Mask and people I didn't know, like Kevin Bacon. I didn't know that was Kevin Bacon. It was a guy getting a thing shoved up through his throat. I didn't know it was Kevin Bacon, So I was seeing that stuff before I hooked up with Tim, because I remember that was going back to Minnesota. That was when when Friday the 13th came out. I was there that night in the theater seeing that movie. So I always had that interest, of course, which I did way back when I was a kid because of Horror Incorporated and Dracula. And
were there any other big properties or big things that influenced you in the horror genre in the teens that you wanted to talk about before we move on to adulthood?
Oh, Evil Dead. I remember seeing Evil Dead. Robert Kelly and we went to see, I think it was Star Crasher. Star Crasher. It had the robots in it where they were going, all right, you pull that spaceship over to the nearest asteroid. We got to do an inspection on your ship. And I remember leaving there between that, going back and forth between that and Blazing Saddles. So, but Evil Dead came in the I think early 80s, maybe. And then then they had the midnight movies. Oh, okay, there you go. Midnight Madness. Every Friday night at midnight, they had all the horror movies. Dawn of the Dead has got to be my top number one, George Romero. When I went to see that, I was working at Kmart then, so that must have been in 77. And that was before Tim and I had hooked up again. So I was definitely already into the horror phase, because I remember going to Dawn of the Dead and making these stupid comments when the movie was going on, like the Hare Krishna zombie, which Mike Christopher, which became a friend of mine later in life. There's a scene where he's going after the girl and he's getting close, and then the guy comes in and shoots him, and the guy runs to this girl, Flyboy runs to the girl, and they hug each other. And I yelled out loud because I was making all these comments, and I yell out, "Don't worry, honey, I'm the only one that'll ever eat you." And everybody was like, "Shut up, man." And when they had the scene when they break through into the basement and all the zombies are in there eating each other, there was a real, like a lull because they're just chewing and like that. I went, "Don't worry, Mom, they're eating right at Harvey's." And everybody's like, "Shut up, man." So I had a line for everything through the whole movie. And these two guys, I found out later from the girls at Kmart the next day, they go, "Our boyfriends were going to kill you. We had to physically hold them down in their seats because they were going to come back and beat the hell out of you." And I go, "Yeah, welcome to my world. Everybody wants to beat me up."
Nice. Okay, so had the interest in the horror movies transitioned from like an emotional response to the production, or was there still an emotional response to it?
I think as I saw them, I mean, I enjoyed, of course, I enjoyed all movies, but horror was, really cool. And then, of course, sci-fi and all that. But the horror element was always neat because, you had like Evil Dead was, "Oh, man, look at the trees are coming alive." I remember a friend was there with me and he was like, "This is stupid." I go, "No, that's cool. The tree's raping the girl. How more original can you get than that?" And so I was enjoying them. But at the same time, I had this urge to like, I really, I had already done this stuff in the past, so I was always kind of like.
So from that, the adult point forward, were there other things in the horror business that really affected you, either from a creative standpoint or an emotional standpoint, outside of your own body of work?
Well, just movies like Friday the 13th, Evil Dead. I'm trying to think of some of the movies from them. Well, when RoboCop came, that was way later, but RoboCop was freaking awesome. But the earlier stuff, and Dawn of the Dead, of course, Night of the Living Dead. So I was always influenced, always seen those movies, and that's But like I said, the whole gambit was pretty much all. I liked all movies, but the horror really took over a lot, and some sci-fi.
Okay. I'm a little confused by the timeline. So I had put down The Evil Dead and Dawn of the Dead. I thought you had said that was back in the teenage years. Was that teenage or adult?
No, Evil Dead would have been in it was after high school, so it must have been in the 80s, and then like 1980, Evil Dead, and then Dawn of the Dead would have been in the 70s, 1977, because I remember I was working at Kmart, so I was 15 then. Kmart 15, 16, I think, would have been Dawn of the Dead.
Okay.
And yeah, and the Evil Dead might have been 80s or 81. So 1980, and then those are the main ones from those two eras, I think.
And the reason that I'm trying to focus on stuff outside your body of work is because I've seen your IMDb and we could talk for hours on that. So, so Evil Dead, RoboCop, anything else that influenced you that you enjoyed as a fan?
Probably a ton that I'm just blank on a lot of the movies now from back in the day. Those ones I can remember, and then even the midnight movies. I'm trying to remember like what else would have been at the midnight movies, because I know there was a bunch of horror movies, but now they're just not. The only ones I can think of are Evil Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and I'm trying to think of some others of that era.
While you're thinking about that for a second, I'm just going to quick do a check. Chris, are you still there? Because we haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, just checking.
My microphone was muted. I was saying things, but it was muted.
Nice.
I think I cleared my throat and I forgot to unmute. Oops.
Nope.
Now, I do remember the AMC movie train for the midnight movies. It was the guys live here in St. Pete because I read an article about them. That would come on. It would say, board the AMC train. It would have all these horror. The Exorcist was in there. She'd twist her head around and the train would race through, and it was monsters and all kinds of stuff. And you'd see that at the midnight movies before the movie would play. It would say, like, welcome to the AMC movie train. And then where all these movies would take place.
So in your adult years now, I'm guessing you've got some sort of a horror crew, if not literally in the movie sense. How about outside of the work sense, but just in like friends and family? Do you have like a group of people that you enjoy this stuff with?
You know, when you say family, and this is just shifting back to the 70s, because you just made me think of this. My brother, Bruce, used to like the movie stuff. I brought the Super 8 camera or actually, I don't think it was, I don't know if I had the Super 8 camera then, or it must have been the Super 8 camera. We shot some stuff with my grandma, and we did like a magic show. My brother built this thing up so it make it look like he jumped up in the air and saved somebody on a second story. So we were doing stuff together, and then there was a television show on, or a movie. It was about the mummy, but not your typical mummy. This mummy had a big, like, rectangular head, and he was like, I was like, oh, what's that? And he goes, that's what we're going to watch as soon as we get home. And so we had those same interests as the movies, but of course, as you get older, your interests change, and now I don't really, I mean, I hear from him occasionally, and I try and call him, but it's not like, hey, I did a new movie. Nobody really cares in the family, I don't think. I mean, they're like, oh, that's good you're doing that. What else is going on? It's not like, oh, great, you did another movie. This is fantastic. They don't care. So the family, aside from my Super 8 stuff in the 70s, Steve would come out before me and nobody look at the camera, and stuff like that. But it was more than I can't really say like like I'm not getting with family to do movies. I do. One of my nephews, he went to Busch Gardens with us one night, and he pulled up on his phone. He pulled up Screaming for Sanity, and some guy behind him was looking at him, and he goes, look at that. See that guy? That's him right there in line. That's that guy right there.
Nice.
So that was about it as far as family, I think. By the time he got to where Tim and I were teaming up, it was him and I. And then we met this guy, Al Nicolosi, at a video store called Video Extron. And he was going to be our camera guy for Twisted Illusions. He worked at channel, I think ABC Channel 12 in West Palm. He became our camera guy. And then, so the three of us put it together. Then we went and rented an editing bay. We all pooled our money together, got an editing bay. I think they were like $40 an hour then. and we'd spend the day there putting the Twisted Illusions together. And then same thing with Day of the Reaper. I went to Tim's house and I helped him package it. Then we got in our cars and we drove all over the east coast of Florida, from Miami all the way up to Cape Canaveral, selling Day of the Reaper. Then we got into Twisted Illusions, made the packaging, same thing, got in our cars, went and sold it all over, took some of that money, invested into a better, because we went into Video Extron with the black and white cover, and the guy was like, yeah, I don't want to buy this. I go, you said you were going to buy it. He goes, it's a black and white cover. I go, hey man, don't screw me around. If I go make a color cover and come back, are you going to buy it? Yes or no? I'll buy it. And I go, man, I'll be back in a week and a half. You better buy this. And we went, and I went back to Video Extra, and he goes, fine, that's better. I'll take 3 of them. So that's as far as our crew was, that was me and Tim and Al getting Twisted Illusions out. Then after Twisted Illusions, that's when we sent that to Jeff Miller at Peerless Films in Chicago. And we called him on the phone, and he loved it. And I was trying to talk like I'm a big time whatever. And I'm going, well, we want to get somebody to buy, at least 10 copies. And he goes, my friend, I'm going to buy 10,000 copies. And I didn't know who this guy was. And I was like, cool. And I remember telling Tim. And then we got on a 3-way call with Jeff. And then I had some problems in West Palm. I moved to Pensacola. So Tim kind of took over, and he was calling me on the phone. And he would give me updates. And I was even like defeated, because I was like, Tim, you kind of beating a dead dog there. He goes, well, I'm still trying. The next thing I knew, he flew to Chicago, and then there got a storyboard artist. He's meeting with Jeff. And then he's back, and then he's calling me. He goes, you need to come back. He goes, I'm not old enough. You need to come back and sign the papers to be the president of Twisted Illusions. Well, I couldn't get there. So his dad signed off on it. Then I did get there, but his dad was president. And then all of a sudden, now we've got we got Yale Wilson from Death Wish, and Jeff Miller from Vegetable House, and Bob Shelley from Ghostbusters and Invasion USA, and Heavenly Kid, and Jerry Berry from Heavenly Kid, and Prom Night. So now there, when you talk about connections, that was your connections. All these people were coming in to make our movie. And that was the birth of Truth and Air, which was in like 1984.
So I'm going to skip down and ask some questions that we normally do at the very end. And I'm hoping that maybe some of these will throw some different light on some of the things that we've been talking about. I'm going to ask what movie you've watched more times than any other, but I don't mean what's your favorite movie. I just mean literally, which movie do you think you've watched more times than any other?
Yeah, it can be like that one that you just throw on whenever you go to sleep. Just whatever you watch the most times out of everything.
Dawn of the Dead, George Romero, not the other one.
Yeah.
RoboCop, Jaws,
classic.
Top 3 is fine.
That's
top 3 will work.
A lot, but I would say those more. If I were to get off and walk out and the TV was on RoboCop, I'd be like, oh, what kills me is if it's on TV and they go, and you're getting at the real good parts, and they go, oh, Dawn dishwashing soap. Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to sit through 9 minutes of commercials. I'll go put the DVD in. But yeah, it would be that would be if Jaws was on, I would, oh, cool. I'll sit down, and we're going to need a bigger boat. Dawn, buy Dawn dish. Okay, I'm done with that. I go get the DVD.
So what would you say your favorite film then would be?
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah, that's where when you get asked these things, and one person can definitely say one. It's hard to do that. I'm always Dawn of the Dead. Oh yeah, and Evil Dead. Oh, Superman was good. Batman. So then it goes on. Mm-hmm. But I'd say I don't know. I've always got the most enjoyment, I think, out of like Dawn of the Dead.
Okay. Do you see any common threads about what kinds of horror you like cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, zombie?
Well, I will say, occult too. Not that I really like the occult, but I'm a big fan of the television show Supernatural. So that gears it into that portion because they're always fighting demons and stuff. And then I would say the horror with like the escape psycho, like Alone in the Dark, the original Alone in the Dark, the first one, that was really cool. Which I saw that in, that's how you get to my memories. That was in Tampa. I saw Alone in the Dark in Tampa back in the 80s, and then followed by Tremors, which I saw here at the Mission Bell movie theater here, and that was in the 80s. Tremors was awesome. So like Tremors would be the good old monster movie. That was really cool, original. They're smashing up out of the ground, and they would get you. What else? What other kinds? And then of course Jaws, which is, you say horror, but you also it's more of like a fishing expedition with a shark that could be called a monster. Because you don't say, "Oh, look at the monsters in the ocean." No, you say, "Look at the sharks in the ocean." But it can still be thrown in that gear. Aliens. Yeah, so I guess kind of all forms. But yeah, the psychopath escaping, the monster coming up out of the ground, the monster stalking through the neighborhood, the aliens that have invaded that are, ripping people apart or kidnapped. There's one I saw on cable where they attacked, of course, the world, and then they're pulled onto the spaceship and it ended. But then I saw the sequel and I go, I think this is the sequel to that one I saw a year ago or a while ago on cable, where the guy had been taken over by the alien. He became part alien and he was going around saving the humans on the ship. And that was pretty cool. So yeah, pretty much, Exorcist, it took me that's a story in itself. I didn't watch The Exorcist till like 6 years ago because I was scared of all that demonic stuff. And I go, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. Then I was like, this is what I was afraid to watch. Why?
To me, it feels like the common thread through everything we've talked about is excitement. And I think excitement is like, how can I say this? If you try to peel back the onion layer and say, well, what is it that drives excitement? Typically it's a very strong love or desire for something. And so I'm finding myself wondering what it is about these different genres, the occult, the psychotic, escapee, these different situations. What is it about those things that you love?
I don't know. Just like I said, like when I see something like Dawn of the Dead or RoboCop, you got this cop and then they shoot him and you're like, oh my God, they're just blowing him away. And then they rebuild him, kind of like, you're back to the $6 Million Man kind of thing. And then the actual vengeance of it all. When he goes back and starts blowing up, that's a good thing you think about. It's like the bad guys that are out there in the world that you go and you're getting a Coke or something. Somebody's like, hey, screw you, man. Dude, I'm getting a Coke. What's your problem? Fuck you. I'll blow your fucking head off. I got a gun right here. And you're like, dude, I'm getting a Coke. What is your problem? So you want justice. So I want to see somebody go out on the street, find that guy at the Coke machine, and the next time he goes, fuck you. No, fuck you. Boom! And blow him away. I want vengeance. And that's what I saw in RoboCop. And I'm like, yeah, kick the shit out of them. And Death Wish,
that guy in the dick.
Bronson. Death Wish 3 was freaking awesome when he's like, he goes, this is my friend. And they open it up. And it's a 357 Auto Meg elephant gun pistol. And he's like, and then he's just out in the street there. Where are you going? I'm going to go get an ice cream cone. You're like, oh, fuck yeah, it's about time. Take the town back. That's how I feel. I can do it in the movies. I can't do it in real life. I see it all the time. I go, I'm going to track that guy down and I'm going to beat the living shit out of him. And then I'm like, no, I'll get caught. I'll go to jail. He'll still be free. I just fucked up my life. Do it in a movie. I got a guy here in town that's always putting me down. Always saying stuff about me. Always, his movies suck. He's not in Hollywood movies. That's all he can do. Blah, blah, blah. He just says shit about me. And everybody tells me, I go, dude, you should sue this guy. I told my wife last night, I said, you know what? I feel like going over to his house. I know where he lives and fucking just beat the shit out of him. I can kill him. I got other friends of mine that knew I was upset by this guy. And this is an actual quote from the guy. He goes, Joel, if you want, tell me who he is. I'll go kill him. I'll make his body disappear. You'll never have to worry about him again. I go, no, dude, don't do that. But I
am saying on public record right now, please do not go kill that person.
Yeah, some cop would hear this and something. My grandmother's the one that told me a long time ago. I got into a fight with a guy when I worked at Armalini. This is in the 80s too. I grabbed the guy and I threw him up against the inside of the truck because he's working in the trailer. And I went down there and I grabbed him and I threw him against the wall. I go, hey, man, I'm going to beat the living shit out of you if you don't shut the fuck up. And then I threw him on the ground. I said, you want to do something? Get up. Let's see you do something. Because it's just me in the trailer. And he's like, dude, you're going crazy. I don't want nothing to do with you. I remember telling my grandmother, she goes, if he turns up dead and anybody witnessed that, they're going to come looking for you. I go, yeah, I know. I just got a temper. I can't help it. But yeah, I think it's the ultimate for me is the vengeance. And even as far as where Batman goes after the bad guys. But RoboCop was going after all the scumbags. And in Death Wish 3 with Charles Bronson, and the people go, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to go get an ice cream cone. You're like, yeah. And then he whips his Nikon camera over his shoulder. And the guy runs up and snatches his camera and runs. And Bronson just turns around at the 357, targets him and goes, boom! That's great. He goes over to the punks getting new. What are you guys doing? Hey, man, it's none of your business. We're breaking into the car. What business of it yours? And Bronson goes, it's my car.
Yeah.
And blows them all away.
Nope.
That's the ultimate for me. Go out and kill all the fucking bad guys.
It's funny because the word vengeance, I think, really does summarize pretty well stuff that we've talked about through this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you landed on that word, because I think that really is a good word for it. There's another word that it's a 2-word phrase it's bugging the shit out of me because I can't think of the right wording, but the gist of it is like dream satisfaction, wish fulfillment. That's the phrase I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
About.
Wish fulfillment. Yeah.
No, that's actually a great summary, I think, for everything that we've talked about. I'm glad that you landed on that word because you did my work for me.
All right. I tell my wife sometimes in traffic, I go, I swear to God, if I had, well, first of all, I got insurance. If I had a big old LTD crappy car I didn't give a shit about, I would just go slide over in someone's lane and scrape the crap out of their car and go, oh, sorry, bill my insurance. See you later. Or they don't park. Like there's a good scene in Fried Green Tomatoes. The lady's going to pull into a parking space and the teenagers whip in there. They go, sorry, lady, we're younger and we're faster. And she just takes her car and smashes it into their car. I'm older and got better insurance.
Yeah. So usually the last question that we ask is
why horror?
Why horror? Because as opposed to other genres, but I think the violence and the vengeance part of it really, I don't know if there is another genre that you can really get that in other than maybe like war movies
or like action, like the Bronson films. I mean, that definitely has a vengeance angle to it.
Yeah,
but you're right. Vengeance is kind of built into horror. I mean, the whole horror subgenre is vengeance.
That's true, but I think the difference between like war movies versus this is, there's a little bit of a lighthearted humor to the horror genre, whereas like war movies, there's no humor to it. It's just, this is it.
That's true.
And so if you have a personality that isn't quite so deadly serious about it, literally, I could see how this would be more attractive. The horror genre would be more attractive to you than that, for example. Do you see any other reason why you find horror being a better fit for that kind of, the emotional release of, like I say, that wish fulfillment? Others say that beyond other genres. Or do you have any other genres that you found that you get that out of? Maybe that I'm completely missing.
Well, I mean, they are there in the horror. I mean, even in the horror, there's one, I watched it recently. I think it was with Kevin Bacon, and it shows him with his kids growing up and stuff. And then one night they're coming home and his kid's a teenager and he just made a great hockey game. And the kid goes into the grocery store and he's pumping the gas. And, oh, yeah, these cars had raced by him in traffic. And then those cars come to the store and they go in the store and Kevin Bacon's pumping the gas. And his son's in there and they hold up the store and they shoot his kid and shoot the clerk. And then Kevin Bacon runs into him. And then the cops are like, well, we can't do nothing. We didn't see anything. And that I can't remember the name of it, but Kevin Bacon's awesome in it because he goes home and decides that nobody else is doing it. So he goes out on his own, just like in Death Wish, tracks this whole gang down and takes them all on one by one. But it's super, super violent, more violent than Death Wish because what he's doing to him. But again, that's that, revenge type movie. So I always like those revenge, but revenge can come.
And this is a Kevin Bacon movie? I don't think I've ever heard of this one.
I'm pretty sure it's Kevin.
What was it?
Because
Chris?
I really like Kevin Bacon a lot. And I was like, this is really something for him. And I can't remember the name. I saw it on cable. I said, I like Kevin Bacon. I got to like this movie.
Chris, do you remember?
I just said he's in everything, but Kevin Bacon revenge film.
Yeah, IMDb him or...
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but that's the thing. The revenge can come in. Hell, take Uncle Buck. He got his revenge on the kid. Anybody seen Bug? Is Bug here? Looking for Bug? Is Bug here?
Jesus. Was it death sentence? Did he shave his head at one point?
Yeah, death sentence. I think that was it.
Yeah, this looks awesome and fucked up in every way possible.
Yeah, because he's a normal guy, but they took his kid away, and I tell my wife that, I'm like, I lost my son to cancer. I go, I think if that was something else, I may have tracked down the guy and planned it out and set it up, and then strike when the time's right and kill him and get my vengeance, because that's exactly what he did. He just. The gang took his, and then I think they took his wife, and I think they took his other son because they find out that he's tracking him down, and but yeah, he just goes after him, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, first I want to say I'm sorry to hear about your son.
Thank you.
Second, I want to say, because I'll probably never ever get another chance in my life to say something as stupid and funny as this. From the dark humor side of it, I'm glad that it was cancer that took him. Like if you, like you just said, if it was some other guy that did it, like you'd go do this whole other crime and then you'd be in jail. So
True.
in a weird kind of way,
a faceless villain.
It's probably maybe a better thing that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Not that it should have happened at all, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, because then you'd be in jail and you wouldn't have made all these awesome movies.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Other people they can do whatever they want and they'll get away with it. I always tell my wife that. I go, but if I did that, I'd be in fucking jail right now for we don't know what we did with the key to Wynkoop's cell. I guess we'll just have to stay. He's proved innocent. Nah, just leave him in there.
Yeah, and then we got all the Wynkoop didn't kill himself memes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very glad that we were able to come up with a good summary, very concise summary of the vengeance and the wish fulfillment and stuff like that, because that really does summarize everything that we've talked about through the whole call. Before we close the call, is there anything that you want to pitch before we close?
Well, we definitely got to do another show because I got 173 other movies to talk about.
Right.
But right now, I'm working on the Craigline incident. This whole thing started because when this pandemic started in March, we were on the TV. They were on TV saying, stay in your homes. You can't go out at night. And I'm like, what? Are we even shut down? So I stepped outside my door with my camera and I told my wife, I go, shoot me in a scene talking to the camera. Now stand here and shoot me in the scene with me talking to myself into the camera. And that was it. And then I went, I should see if Phil wants to do something. And then that led to Sean C. Phillips doing something. And then this guy and that guy, and then getting an effects guy in Australia and one here. So now I got this 4.5 hour movie called The Craigline Incident, which I got to break it up into like 2 parts. And I'm editing that now. It's about done. And totally, I say, it's a socially distant movie because the only actors that work together are my wife and I, because obviously we're together. Bob Glazer and Jules Sierra, you can't keep those guys apart. They're always together, so they got a scene together. Eric, Danger Dion, and Kate Phoenix, they live together. They're a couple, so they're in the movie together. Everybody else is completely separated, so it's a true socially distant movie. Some people have said, they don't say social, they might say a COVID movie for the lockdown, but I still see the guy and the girl are making out and getting it on and cutting each other up and stuff. So that's not socially distanced because they're together. You brought these actors in together. So I am finishing that up now. It's called The Craigline Incident. I'm also working with Phil Herman to do Always Midnight Part 2. And then we're doing a found footage film for another filmmaker. And so keeping busy. And I finally got a person that I talked to, and the publisher, they've done books before. I've gone through like 3 other author types that were going to do it with me, and it just didn't work out. So I'm going to concentrate. I want to concentrate back on that once the Craigline incident is done, and hopefully just kind of work on the book. So, and if anybody wants, I think Facebook is great for getting people back together and stuff, and seeing your work. I don't basically go on to do like, here's a picture of the spaghetti I'm going to eat tonight. I'm always talking about a movie or something I'm representing. So if someone wants to check out my work, just see me on Facebook. Just go to my name, Joel D. Wynkoop.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, we'll get together offline and put together a bio page for you on the Horror Makes Us Happy page, and we'll link to the Facebook page and anything else that you want us to, YouTube or IMDb or what have you. So yeah, thanks for being our guest this time around. And also thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. Oh, I forgot we have a thank you to put out there. We got our first Patreon subscriber, a Mr. Fiji Green. Thank you, Fiji.
Yes.
And so yeah, on the website, we've got a schedule there posted to show who we're looking at interviewing, a list of people that we'd like to interview. If you can help us connect with any of those people, or if you know somebody you'd like to have us add to the list, let us know. You can also become a Patreon subscriber and link to social media, check out the merch page, all that kind of fun stuff. In general, just come let us know how we're doing. HorrorMakesUsHappy.com.